Akwaba, and you are no adofo. Maybe I come in with the Mominja Mediane. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the facts according to Barry Makobnayabo. I am Barry Makobnayabo, Mississippi. This is the fact according to me. I present to you a political, historical, and current affairs program. Metre say, yembe diagro, yebe bieja, yebe sunyadie, mabuni owo maim, yebe sunyadie, nchirima, yebe sunyadie, yebe sunya aboye hunkomo, near school system 90 million farm maye, na nunti ni waha. I'm here to give you the facts, as according to the basis and beginning of this country. And for the first edition of this program, I present to you a list of 10 presidents and who is the best president since independence, as a hot debate started by Matu Opoku Prempe.
Ghana Ghana Bakosoma. President Kufuor to call retirement. What to be the case we say a free say Ghana from 1957. Abekane, the president be our Ghana China and Adu Kufuor. They say a free 1957. Bakane, what form of crime in Kubado, what form of Obia, the Wabadi Mampania, what Ghana Humpai, and the Ghana Kolanim, China and Adu Kufuor.
And Che Biana, vice presidential candidate, MIMPP. Odana di other two just say Ghana nyina current president Akufo-Addo and why dear nyasi president biaba yemfa ye Kwame Nkrumah nembra nunti na yabaha. That is why I'm here. I'm here to present to you the facts so we all can judge who is the best president since independence. So before we do that, we'll go to the background of this country before it became what is known as Ghana now, and the beginning of it all. Echese yebesuya de near ye fie and the school system nan farmer and yebesuya de echese nkomo ewo krom ewo mpanifo na no ne se nchirima ya ba mabunu ewo man yempa adesua ena near omode kire ewo ayehu o man nim kire se mbabunu no ebi yenye ready say yebe jina mpenifo anam a omufi ho a yebe jina omanam. It seems the youth of this country are not ready by way of learning, so that is why we're here. That is why I'm here to present to you the historical facts synthesized in a way you can understand. Ni mpenifo ne kan wo mokukwo mu ne say yene ebele yenchirima no yene ebra nti me so me be ka kire mu se ne omadi no omuninko ne aka kire ne wo se ebo ho ban. I'm here to inform you, the youth, you out there, my brother, my sister, that what the elders have taken, let them take. What is left, we must guard with our blood and sweat. Ne omadi no omuninko atani enumudia nejia omujina omuchina na etene kane ne beboy ban. That is why I'm here. So before we do that, there is a common cliche or statement that says posterity will judge you. So this is the purpose. That is the purpose of this program. That whatever we do, we living on earth right now, we alive right now, whatever we do now will be judged by posterity, will be judged by future generations. So we are here. We are the posterity to judge what the past generation did, what past leaders did in Ghana, so we can learn from their mistakes and their strength. Yebesuya de akoye chi esuya de ama nchirima na adwen abaso se Ghana ha yewo mpanifo a omobebo brapa wa manyosemu ne yewo omonso a ankoye amfama yen yebesuya de bebie ya adwen ama yeni ada ho se mpanifo wo ho sisia no mufi ho a yenchirima ne be ready. And being ready is not a joke. It's by learning, only learning and knowledge. And in the 21st century, you know, they say knowledge is power. But in the 21st century, I will say the right knowledge is power. We have to have the right knowledge. That is why I'm here. I'm here to present to you the right knowledge about this country, how to build patriotic citizenship, how to bring every Ghanaian to the mind that we can only develop our country from the inside, not outside. Ɔman yi bɛdi a ɛgyina ɔman ho dɔ, patriotism. Nti patriotism ɛmba accident. Ɛyɛ adekyerɛ wokɔ amaman bi so a yɛkyerɛ wɔ school sɛnea ɛbɛma nkyirima no adɔ mo man. Nea wodwen sɛ wobɛtumi ayɛ biara na wayɛ aboa wo man. Ɛno nti ne ɛwɔ ha. Yɛbɛbu atempa. We're gonna make the right judgment based on facts and historical data that I present to you what happened with the right perspective to history. So before we begin, I will oblige you. I'll tell you to subscribe, follow, like, comment, discuss, talk about it. Let's interact. So let's get to it. Before we get into the debate, we started a debate, dissecting that debate, that who's the best president since independence. We would have to go through the basis of how the present day Ghana started. Yebisua de ne be kasiete, ne be kasiete, ne te ele kurete ne yite, ne oman, ne ane be chichiri oman. That's what we're here. We're here to learn. So before we get into it, the present day Ghana, there was no country. Before the white people came here, the first white travelers or traders to reach this country, Ghana, is the Portuguese. They came in the 15th century, exactly like 1480s. They came here. They came here as traders and missionaries. They came here. They came through Elmina, the present-day Elmina. So they gave the name to that place called Elmina, means the mine. They saw gold reserves on that at that part of the country. The Dutch also came through Accra, and they discovered that there are gold deposits in this land called in Ghana, and they named it Gold Coast. So the Portuguese came by charter of their kings. Metrese Europe ahemfo no omu hia sika ade achichiro omu man no na omu di achire ba omu ba oman we mu so omu be pesca ene omu be didwa ndi omu ba Portuguese for ne ba omu ba first no na omu de Christosum ene edwadie ne ba omu be abrofo no omu ba ha niema nan ena omu ba ha so omu be pe gold, omu be pe oil, omu be pe diamonds, ena omu pe nipa enye nipa keke nipa wa hoden ba omu ba na omu hu gold first, gold na omu interest nti omu ne ahemfo no and they started business. When the white people came, they came here for 4 commodities purposely to accomplish and attain 4 commodities. These are gold, oil, diamonds, and the human resource. Not just any human, but the black human resource to go build their empires and kingdoms in Europe. They were going around civilized in the name of religion, and they were colonizing the world. So the Portuguese came, the Dutch followed, and all the while the English were learning the game. So they learned the game from them, and they also followed. But in 1830, from 1821, the English acquired the Christiansborg Castle from the Danes, which were the country Denmark. They were leaving town. They were losing their business. So the English had learned the game from them. They knew the weaknesses of the local Gold Coast people. So they bought the Christiansborg Castle from the Danes, and they renamed it St. George's Castle. But that name didn't stick too much, and they returned to the Christiansborg Castle. So By that, they started controlling the coast in the name of business and trade. They started selling rum, that is alcohol, mirrors, and all the fancy items from Europe for the valuable resources of the African, like gold, ivories, whatever spices, whatever they can buy, salt, they were getting it. So they dictated the pace of the business. Omo na omo hyehyɛ edwadie no nneɛma a yɛde bedi dwa no terms of the trade. Omo na omo dictate. Nti sɛ omo pɛ nipa a omo bɛka kyerɛ ahemfo no sɛ sisi a yɛmpɛ gold biom yɛpɛ nipa mako na omo pa omo bɛka kyerɛ ahemfo no. Nti British no almost started eba inroads into coastal towns to say amaya ana kingdoms ewo mpoano ni nyina almost started take over omo hu say Ashantis no powerful because Ashantis no omo wo achire omo wo interior of the country nti omo trusted amman no ewo mponano no ena amman no ewo mponano so omo te mponano nti bibie be fi po no so aba no omo gidi se abosom nti abrofo ni pie no amman no ewo mponano omo fall for the power of the white man. The coastal towns when the white man came, they came through the coastal towns, and it is on record that most of the coastal towns were bamboozled with the color and the race of the white man. Most of them thought they were gods from the sea, so they accorded them with reverence. And they pay homage to them. They gave them accommodation. They listened to them. Whatever they wanted, they obliged. So the white people started dictating the pace. The English took over, and they were civilizing the people in the sense that now they in the 19th century, from 1840, there was a governor called Captain Maclean, and he started collecting the signatures and the bonds of the coastal town, the chiefs or the kings of the coastal towns. So they signed. When you sign that treaty, you come under the protection of the British governor against the Ashanti Empire. The reason being that the Ashantis, because the Ashantis distrust for the towns along the coast, by privilege of them dealing first with the white people, the Ashantis didn't trust the white people and indirectly didn't trust the leaders of the coastal towns. So they started fighting back. Now Ashantis started collecting slaves and other non-Ashantis from other tribes, precisely from the northern part of the country, to be a part of their kingdom. So they started from a kingdom to an empire, that the king of Ashanti can have vassal chiefs in the north or elsewhere to bring him slaves and residents of that vassal protectorate. So there can be soldiers in the Ashanti army. They had population, they had soldiers, so they were fighting back. And in fact, if it wasn't the power, if it wasn't the intermediary of the white man, the Ashantis would have been the most dominant tribe in the Gold Coast colony, or the territory we know as the Gold Coast or Ghana now. And on the flip side, some historians say if the white people didn't come, the Ashantis wouldn't have been that belligerent, trying to fight other African countries, African kingdoms of their own tribesmen. In fact, the Ashantis and the British fought 4 wars, and among the 4, 3 were to reclaim their territories they've lost to the white people by way of royalties and taxes from the local vassal territories. So the coming of the white man brought a lot of social upheavals among the African colonies in Ghana, or the territory we know as Ghana. Abrofone ba no omo de ehu ebre asantefo no nti omo started edom ho se omo ni anya den a asantefo abrofo no be other tribes now omo di omo so no kena no omo be fight against omo. and nti na Ashantifoɔ no so say na omo conquer other tribes na omo ne abrofo no nti Captain McLean on signed a bond of 1844 towns kro na omo suro Ashanti power no na omo signed a bond of 1844 nti na started knighthood of our kings na abrofo no obehye bond of 1844 na obehye broni ni bond na se na ya ma ya knighto sisi onye potentate anazo onye ondon ho wo man na mo wo hye governor enye British queen nimpo ase ana king nase wo hye governor nase na governor no so report to the king alani omutwinebe no omuben papa omuben chanete bebre na ne no Asantefo ne the last Ashantis were the last to be conquered because the British had already conquered the northern territories. By way of going there, you would have to pass through Ashanti. So the Ashantis didn't like it, and the British too didn't like it that even though Ashantis were their enemies, they would have to pass through the Ashanti territory before they could access the northern territory, the northern protectorate, which has come under the British governor. So the Ashantis started fighting back, and the British engaged them in the war, and they lost. By the 1900s, Ashantis had come under the protectorate of the colony. So Ashantis became part of the British colony, Crown Colony of the Gold Coast. They named the whole territory Gold Coast, and that Gold Coast from 18th century out to the 20th century, which is in the 1920s, a whole class of citizens started coming up by way of the chiefs losing their powers to the royal or the British governors of the colony. Now a new class of citizens, which are the sons of the chiefs and tribesmen, the local citizens who had been educated by the British, yet they want power in their local land. Now they started what is called the intelligentsia. They came in between the chiefs and the British governor. But first, it was an indirect rule that the British governor or the British power had full access to our kings. Our kings had devolved their powers to the British crown or the governor. So then they were powerless. All the taxes they were taking the kings collected the tax, but gave it to the British governor. Now, the laws of the land were dictated by our kings before they came, but after signing the bond, there were legislative council, means the governor made the laws, and he had a selection of some prominent African kings who are signed to the treaty to be a part of the legislative council. Baby, almost Shambrano. If ya him for na belusu ya power, ni power biem, the power nama Brunino. Governor no among crowd no na abeje ye ahim for the power no nti by the early 1920s no a new group of Ghanaians omako school who said almost they say sahin for nan alusu power na was almost omo brem no mbedi omo fight and omo kuma on my Gold Coast. So far, based on the preamble I've given you, it is a fact. So I would bring you. This is a subject on its own, that how the country came to be Ghana. Senia abusuan ku ne abrofo ne behia sisia yewo oman Ghana no. And no better topic a day die ye de beba me de bebramo. But let's focus on the subject of the day. The subject of the day is who is the best president since independence. And before we get to that, I would say from the 1920s, let's deal with the intelligentsia. Because the intelligentsia, they are the consequence of what we see as leaders right now. So the intelligentsia, actually say, omo nyahemfo. Ana se wonyo hineba enso wako broni school ama wabenya dibra woche hineba. That is the Akan meaning of intelligentsia. And there were kings like the Oforiates who took their children, gave them to the British to be educated so they can come back and be part of the local system to rule the colony called Ghana, in the hope that when the white man leaves, such a colony will be an inheritance of such kings, because they saw themselves as inheritors of the treaty they signed called the Bond of 1844, signed on 6th March 1844, and that bond was the basis of the independence struggle. That bond was to last for 100 years. So from 1844 to 100 years would be 1944. But when 1944 came, there were a certain class of people called intelligentsia. They are who I want to talk about. And this intelligentsia, they started the first political movement. Amanyokua sa intelligentsia na se Ghana for omako school, abrofo omako broni school a omabenya tumi no. Omote amanyokua omuhu se efedie omabesua de ebi aye lawyers, ebi ne governors in the court school, ebi ne governors in the court school, because the local subjects were to be educated to fill the parts for the European government. So they did that. And most of them, by virtue of being from a royal background, saw that they had privy to some documents, such as the treaties and all. And some of them started what is called the Aborigines Rights Society. And that was the first movement they started in the 1920s by a man called John Mensah Saba. They were nationalist intelligentsia. Chese omo school na omo koy no omo no mo wo aman ho do wo makoma mu. Nti omo hu sa brofo na twa ye mpanifo na di. Omo twa hemfo na di nti omo no e wo se omo gi ana omo koma ye na ye gi asase na brofo na beji through indirect rule no omo na omo beko na ye gi asase nti omo ti amanyoku a e kire se abi before asase ho ntokwa Aborigines Rights Society. Indeed, almost started a movement almost fighting for the land rights of the local chieftaincy or chieftains, the chiefs who have lost their power and their lands to the government. They went as high as go to England, petition the Parliament of England to give back the land the British government have seized through the governor and colonialism. So that's the basis of the nationalism or national activism, political activism. Almost start here. Indeed, by 1944, bond of 1844 na end no. So time no. Na John Mensah Saba no me nyina omoko. But there were new crop of intelligentsia were memu. To say J.B. Dankwa no. Joseph Kwame Boachi Chirechie Dankwa. After 1844, I was a Ghana, Gold Coast colony no. I free no. Na omo ye atituru a omo bohoma omo ya hemfo ba omo otumi e wo man mu a awose omo je fanwodie ma oman mu, but unfortunately omo ne governors ne abrofo na the coast school omo ne omo nyina wo Freemason or the same lodge ya night omo papa ne omo ankasa in essence no omo ni amahodo omo ntokwa na omo kuno na nyaatwomo ho omo ko ama abrochire aban, but omo mankrofo no hu se abibifman tokwa na yako, but it wasn't like that. What I'm trying to say is that after the 1944, the end of the bond of 1844, which lasted 100 years for the white man to exploit everything they could from the colony called the Gold Coast, there were no credible politicians or politicians with enough patriotism to fight for the independence of Ghana. They were waiting for the white man to just quit and abandon business and give the right of business to the local intelligentsia like Dr. J.B. Dankwa, very high intellectual, well respected by the Europeans more than his local citizens in the colony. So They were they were friends. They formed, so from then, a new crop, the intelligentsia, they saw that they could gain first by business. They saw an economic loop in the sense that when the white merchants bring the goods, now the local intelligentsia and the businessmen were the middlemen. They received the goods into their warehouse and inflate the prices. Now the chiefs didn't control the business between the merchants, the European merchants, and the local people. It was the intelligentsia, the local businessmen, who called themselves the African merchants. They were dealing with the white people. So they got the goods from the white man or the white merchants, and they would retail it or retail it to their local citizens. And by that time, into the 40s and 50s, they were notorious in this country. So there was a prominent organization called the West African Merchant Association of West African Merchants, the Association of West African Merchants. So their acronym is AWAM. And this AWAM, they became a group of business intermediaries, businessmen or intelligentsia dealing with the white people. And when they get the goods from Europe, they inflate the prices to the local residents. So when the residents saw that trick, they started naming their AWAM became synonymous with tricksters, became synonymous with smugglers, became synonymous with defrauders, became synonymous with usurers. Usurers, I mean, among for mobobosia, no more the jata apantine account say uwe now they are. That is what I mean. People who take a lot, who give in the form of loan, and the payment of the loan, they require double or triple of it. So the people got fed up and agitated against the Awam group. So these local businessmen saw they were losing power, they were losing the local touch. So they had to change their game. So they formed a new movement. There was this movement came in the form, that is the first time the country had the form of a local political movement, that there were no white men involved in that movement. And that movement or political organization's name is the United Gold Coast Convention, popularly known as the UGCC. And the UGCC were a group of former members of the Awam group. When the game of the Awam was disbanded or got notorious, they changed the game. So they formed the United Gold Coast Convention. They were businessmen. They had no interest or no knowledge in politics, how to organize, how to bridge between the rich and the poor, how for a prominent, educated black man to put down his suit and go down and speak his local language to convince his local brother who couldn't speak the white man's language to have the right knowledge or power of knowledge. They wouldn't do. So that prompted somebody called Kwame Nkrumah, the young Kwame Nkrumah. He was the only local politician trained in America. The rest were all from England, and by that they were lawyers prominently, they were businessmen, and if they were prominent, they were part of their secret societies and brotherhoods. They were classmates. But when that young Kwame Nkrumah came to Ghana, he had no classmates. They knew nothing of him. They only saw him in a newspaper called the Manchester Tribune, which Akwaje showed them that he was a member of the organizers for the 1938 Pan-African Congress in England. So they had to bring him to become this General Secretary of the United Gold Coast Convention, the UGCC. So they promised to pay him £100 per month for that duty, and he accepted. In fact, it took some convincing to make him accept. Friends like Padmore, W.E.B. Du Bois, and others in the West convinced him that before he can fight for the total liberation of Africa, he has to stand somewhere. He had to get a base, and the only base that could be his own country, that to go back. As an African, you cannot win outside. You can only win inside. That is the basis of patriotism. So he understood that from the beginning, that you can never win outside but from the inside. So you better build and fight from the inside with your own people. That is the game he brought to the political scene in the 1940s when they invite the young Kwame Nkrumah to become the General Secretary of the new political movement called the United Gold Coast Convention. The young Kwame Nkrumah was invited to be the General Secretary of the new political movement in the Gold Coast called the United Gold Coast Convention. And he came to Ghana and he came to the Gold Coast to do that job. And when he came, the promise of £100 per month, that will be his salary, was reduced to £25 per month. So he rejected the whole pay and did that job for free. Mr. Sir, Omoma Nebeye, General Secretary of UGCC, no. Omo promising is on a month to be on £100. Inti obeji adwuma no efedi I start adwuma no bosome so a na ye tua no £25 ohun se omu twinedi na no so de ne awakosua ne obetimi aye no enya ne bo ne £25 inti onje saaka tua no inti oye adwuma no for free na mpanifo ne tiase. So that is the basis. So he became the General Secretary of the UGC. The party UGC, United Gold Coast Convention, was started in 1948. He came to Ghana. It was started in 1947. He came to Ghana in 1948, and he started his work. So by a year into his job, he has proselytized the UGCC to every part of the country, to all parts of the colony, that every local person knows that there's a party fighting for the interest of the local people called the United Gold Coast Convention. There was a popular man called Nanka Bruce. He had a local radio station, the first local man to have a radio station in the Gold Coast, precisely in Accra, called Nanka Bruce. And he started broadcasting, started educating the local people about the new movement called the United Gold Coast. So in part, that gained them popularity, and Kwame Nkrumah was particularly known to be the leader or the most famous person among the United Gold Coast Convention. That time, Dr. J.B. Dankwa was the president of the southern division of the United Coast Convention. They had a northern division which captured Ashanti and the northern territories. They had a western, which is the western region, Mankasim and Cape Coast. They came under the western division, and the southern division was Accra and the other towns in the southern part of the colony. And so he was the president of the southern division of the United Gold Coast Convention. And so they started the activism, and they found out that the young Kwame Nkrumah was too vibrant. His teachings, Mitrese, United Gold Coast Convention, Penifoni, who said Kwame Nkrumah no too much passion, and only local people na omo school intelligentsia omo school ni from veranda boys no oni omo chibom sin omo school ba ono anka ono e krachi ni esa anka oni omo akrachi fo ni mo na hwibom nanso oni akrutufo ni omo school ni mo na hwibom because otimide ne brofo ne krachi sem no to nchen no oni omo kasa ewo nipa level, from human to human level. So he had that charisma. A lot of people liked him because he spoke their language. He spoke in the language they could understand. He was representing their struggle. He was a man of the people. So by 1948, there was the ex-servicemen or the veterans from the Second World War. They have learned that, in fact, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah told them, the young Kwame Nkrumah told them that the ex-servicemen, the white ex-servicemen who fought in the Second World War, were being paid their per diem and ex gratia, end of service benefits, but the Africans were left out, so they should agitate for their right. And in fact, it is on record that he was the one who wrote a letter to be sent to the governor at the Christian Bock Castle that brought about the 1948 riot. In fact, by 1948, Ghana colony in Ajinsem, local people know Kwame Nkrumah ne UGCC na mamati asiyese abrofoni chiomadi that by 1944 anka esa man omujama bi before no mo bu omoman nanso 1944 na twa ho ama bedu 1948 na still abrofoni na edi oman no so ama before ni power. So intelligentsia no omomu hu say sa power na abrofoni beja no yemfa ma himfo no omo akrachifo no na omo be asumu power after abrofoni afi oman. It was known that after the 1944, the end of the bond of 1844, for 100 years, the country will be bequeathed or will be inherited by the local intelligentsia, not the chiefs, as it was before the white man came, that the chiefs and the kings had power in their various domains. But after the 1944, the end of bond of 1844, the intelligentsia saw that they could take the power from the white man and become the new lords instead of the chiefs. So they started fighting for it, but half-sadly, until Kwame Nkrumah came in the business. So the 1948 riots, popularly three main prominent members, Sergeant Ajete, Captain Atipo, Odati Lamte, they held the petition to be given to the governor. In fact, that petition was written in the hand of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. So he gave the petition to them to go and petition for their right to be paid their ex gratia or end of service benefit after the Second World War. And Major Imre, who was the bodyguard for the Christian Bock Castle, he was to protect the domain of the governor. And they knew that once anybody tried to breach the domain of the governor, they would be shot. The governor would be protected. So the three ex-servicemen, the leaders of the riot to the Christian Bock Castle in 1948, they met Major Imre, who sought to take the petition instead of the governor. And they refused because Osagyefo had already briefed them that if the major took the petition, they are done. Their request wouldn't be obliged. But if they present it to the governor, it would be official. And the colony, they will get what they want. So they pushed forward, and the major ordered them to be shot. So the three ex-servicemen whose blood was shed at the 1948 riot became the basis for the fight for the independence. Kwame Nkrumah saw that, predominantly Kwame Nkrumah. I would have said the UGCC, but his history will say that Kwame Nkrumah saw that the blood of the three ex-servicemen, great warriors, should never go in vain. So he started agitating for boycott and demonstrations against the white power. And 6 people were arrested to be responsible for the massive agitation, demonstrations against the British power. So Dr. J.B. Dankwa, Akwaje, Obechebi Lamte, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, William Oforiatta, they were known as the Big Sis. And there was a newspaper who captioned, "The Big Sis have been arrested," in that those 6 people were the leaders of the southern enclave of the UGCC, not all the members of the UGCC, not the northern enclave or the western enclave, but only the southern enclave, because the agitation was predominantly in Accra. So those 6 executives, or the leaders of the UGCC Southern Enclave, were arrested and held at James Fort in Accra. And the 5 of them who were arrested, including Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, betrayed that it was Kwame Nkrumah who started that movement. They didn't know anything about it. So the 5 were released, and it remained Kwame Nkrumah in prison. And that started a catalyst for the popularity of Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Now people saw that the man we know as the leader of the UGCC, the man we know as the face of the UGCC, or the voice of the people for the UGCC, have been remained in prison, while the others we don't know until that day they are arrested, have been released. So his close allies like Komla Gbaligbedema, Kojobo Ochuo, and others, Jenkli Jau, they fought for him, and they went and they convinced the governor to release Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah from prison by way of popular request, as the people would lose control if they don't release Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So when he came out, the UGCC had no ties. They sacked him as the general secretary of the UGCC. So in 1948, they sacked him. By 1949, Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah started his own political party, a friend of Convention People's Party, Apam Nkrofo, and a party, on any namfufor to say Komla Agbaligbedema, Kojo Bochio, Jenkli Jau, any serious organizers, and forming Convention People's Party. And by virtue of Kwame Nkrumah's popularity, he became the famous politician in the land. By 1949 into the 50s, the most popular political party, was the Convention People's Party. So the old United Gold Coast Convention still was active, and J.B. Dankwa and others were there. So by 1950, Kwame Nkrumah and the Kwame Nkrumah CPP and the UGCC were in Parliament, part of the Legislative Council, and they were fighting for independence. And UGCC, they saw that Kwame Nkrumah, led by the famous J.B. Dankwa, saw that Kwame Nkrumah was popular. There was nothing they could do to take the power he had with the people. So they started fighting, not for independence, in the sense that the United Gold Coast Convention had their motto as the independence within the shortest possible time, and the Convention People's Party had the opposite, which is independence now, in the sense that by 1944, the colony should have been free. And 1951, the colony was some 7 years late from independence, and Kwame Nkrumah knew this because he was the General Secretary of the United Gold Coast Convention, as all the members of the United Gold Coast Convention knew the privies of the treaty. That was the basis of forming that political party. But in the sense that they didn't have the patriotic aspect enough, they didn't have the patriotic vigor enough to fight for the real independence after 1944. So it took a patriotic man, the young, selfless Kwame Nkrumah, emerging as the young leader of the party. He was in his 40s or late 30s when he started the politics in this country. So 1951, he had the majority in parliament, as in the Legislative Council, as in Omo Omoshishemra Emma Omano or colony, Gold Coast. Sikako Komano, Omo Omoshemra no, na CPP no, Omo no more majority. In the British governor, and so who said Kwame Nkrumah no wajinsam sisia ono nko ani nipa broni ni suro ewo mangana mu, because okasa veranda boys ni tie otimi ni omo nantema hu difference kra, but other politicians no omo ntimi and mix it with the Veranda Boys. Kasa kra ya de ma Veranda Boys on betiasie. Ndi Kwame Nkrumah won the majority in parliament and he formed the government he became the Minister of Government Business from 1951. And he was negotiating for independence. So they thought giving him the Minister of Government Business would have been enough for the young Kwame Nkrumah, that he would have stayed mute like any other intelligentsia. But he knew total independence was the right of the African, in the sense that the wealth of the colony must be benefited by the local people. So that was the fight. So he started fighting for real independence from 1951 as the Minister of Government Business. That time, in the 1951 election, he fought against the famous J.B. Dankwa, and the man lost abysmally. He lost. That even his own hometown, Chebi Abuakwa, he was the MP there. He lost that mandate, and his own nephew became the MP or parliamentary candidate, or the MP for Chebi Abuakwa on the ticket of the CPP. So that is the basis. So Kwame Nkrumah fought for independence, real independence, from 1951 and 1957. The British had no choice but to give total independence, and still the UGCC and the local intelligentsia were fighting against Kwame Nkrumah for gaining independence. Chese before na akrachifo no mo abrofo no government started twitwa Kwame Nkrumah na mu se mabroni ni mayen fanhudie, because fanhudie na mba mu nsam ni nyina ne se ebekọ Kwame Nkrumah ono ne hwan onye ohene ba onfie ahimfie eden obeye obekita tumi yedi ya broni promise nananom se emene ba no mu fie oma we mu ahemfo no anom ma ne de power ne ba mom na so obi foforo aba ye friend Kwame Nkrumah wa beje power na fie mu nsam nti assembly ya asefem ema UGC ema JB Dankwa no na adwuma gui as a politician, na adwuma gui nti okoshe no chrome ewe Chebi. Nti from 1957 Osajifo or winning independence. The independence was set March, but it was a relevant date to commemorate the end of the bond of 1844, which was signed on 6 March 1944. So even though the independence was late, the young Kwame Nkrumah or the wise Kwame Nkrumah saw it pertinent that the independence date would be announced on the 6th of March 1957. So that is the basis of the new country he named Ghana. And Ghana means warrior king. Ghana was a name of the Soninke king, the Soninke Empire. Just say akamfo na omufi ancient Mali. Omuba oman we munu. Na baby omufi no nia ohene na odi tumi no ono na na ye friend Ghana. Nti Kwame Nkrumah de oman na waje afi broni ni nsam eto sa ancient empire called Ghana. And no, from Gold Coast to Ghana. The Ghana no a new beginning for black ownership of the old colony of the Gold Coast. Which say after Fanhudie 1957 no, Ghana no be share a bit before some precisely Kwame Nkrumah. Ono no waje amambo na fi broni aman crowd ne nsam abema abi before no nti sisi a ye behwe ne atumi bibini je fi broni ne nsam ne ye de ye after 1957.